Hello and welcome to the 140k Morning Glory video, and before we get into today's video I would like to say a huge thank you to Chris Merrill for sending in some awesome pictures of his Imperial Guard taking on the vile Dark Eldar, the Drukari. Have to say I am a huge fan of the colour scheme. I love a classic Cadian colour scheme that's just done properly. It looks fantastic, and I'm also digging those retro raiders. I think the new raider looks good, but there's just something about that old one. Maybe I don't like the sails in the new one. I'm not sure. The old one looks a bit more like a flying stiletto knife. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a sucker for some retro models, but I absolutely love those old Dark Eldar Raiders. Thank you for sending these pictures in. Also, should say, really appreciate the Battle Systems terrain in the background. I'm a big fan of Battle Systems terrain. I'm going to be using lots of it in battle reports coming up, so good choice there as well, Chris. But thank you for sending these pictures in. If anyone else has got any cool pictures they want me to use in my videos, please post them on my Facebook page like Chris did, or you can email them to me at mordianglorytv@gmail.com, and there will be links and email addresses down in the description below, so don't worry if you can't remember it. But without further ado, let's get into today's video. Now, no mucking about today, guys. No mucking about. We're going to get straight into today's video, and I'm going to be saying something a little controversial. And I'm going against the grain here. I'm putting my neck out. I'm sticking my neck out, but I'm going to say that I don't think that Dark Eldar should be nerfed yet. And that yet is very important. And I have a very good justification, and I think as a guard player I have a relatively unique justification for why I don't think they should be nerfed yet. Alright. Now, for those of you that have been living under a rock, you might be going, well, why do they need nerfing at all? What's the big deal? Dark Eldar, since their coats have dropped, they have hit the competitive scene like a train. They have absolutely blown through it. We have seen an eye-watering 74% win rate across 2,000 plus registered competitive games. There has been thread after thread, Reddit post after Reddit post of people saying they are overpowered, they are broken, and they need to be nerfed. Now, obviously, there's always levels of saltiness when it comes to this kind of thing. You have some people which are quite frankly overreacting, and you have some people who are saying that they're perfect and they don't need changing at all. I disagree with both of those camps, and unfortunately, I'm going to do something which you're not allowed to do on the internet. I'm going to have a nuanced opinion. I know, I have. Surely I just joined one of those extreme camps. No, I'm going to have a nuanced position, and so God help me, I'm going to explain it. So, first thing to do is we need to talk about why people are saying Dark Eldar are overpowered. How are they achieving this 70% win rate? Well, number one, the codex in general is very strong. Okay? It's a strong codex. It's also a codex which is currently, by strong, I mean it's not, the codex itself isn't lifting weights, not pumping iron. But what I mean is that all the unit, there's not really a bad unit in there. By and large, the vast majority of the units in there for the points and for their, to their power, they're pretty strong. Okay, so that's the first thing. There's no real bad choices. The second thing is that they're really well placed in the current meta. You see, Dark Eldar are very maneuverable, and they are somewhat of a glass cannon. This myth about Dark Eldar being a glass cannon it's a bit of a myth. They are a little fragile, but they have lots of ways and always have done of working around that. Previous edition, it was Talos. Talos was one of the most you had the most durable unit in an army that was meant to be glass cannon. So Dark Eldar always have ways of getting around this. So they're meant to be a glass cannon, but they're not. Another thing I say is they're also super maneuverable, which means they get to pick their fights, and because they have such high raw damage output, that letting them pick their fights is, well, it's a one-way ticket to Loserville. You're going to die. You guys are going to wake up one moment next to the Emperor on the Golden Throne. That's what's going to happen. So they've got a really well-balanced codex. They're highly maneuverable. They're highly efficient. And they have some broken combos as well. But they're also dropping into a meta where now they don't have any bad matchups. There have been a few lists that have been able to take them down a peg. But they're dropping into a meta where, well, frankly, it's hyper-durable, hyper-elite infantry. I mean, you have almost entire armies of Gravis Marines walking around there at the moment, with little screening. Their screen being their massive armour, but no one actually screening them. And Dark Eldar being so manoeuvrable means they can jump out and they can pick their fights and they can just, you know, well, drag people away to comma, and what happens then is best left unsaid. But being a bit more serious for a moment, I know serious in this channel, I'm meant to not know what the hell I'm talking about. They can pick their fights. They're entering a meta which they seem very, very well designed to counter. Okay, but even with that, even with people trying to shift and change and adapt, even with that, they still are very, very strong. And they do have some broken combinations. So we've spoken in generalizations. Next step, let's talk about specific instances. There's basically three main culprits in the new Dark Eldar codes which are causing some real problems. And I will admit, much of this comes from the Day 1 DLC, which is the Book of Rust. Won't get into that just yet, not a big fan of Day 1 DLC. But the three main broken things are Dark Technomancer racks with liquidator guns, the Chain Flails Succubus, and the Raider, which is appropriate for the pitch that just popped up. So we'll go through those in order. So the first thing to talk about is the Dark Techno. Everything else is very, very strong. Don't get me wrong. But these three things I would say are broken. Okay, they're the things that are overpowered. Okay. Now, firstly, let's talk about the Dark Technomancer racks with liquidator guns. So a rack itself is only 8 points. You can get a squad of 5 of them with 2 liquidator guns, because you can get 1 on the sergeant and 1 on 1 per 5, and you can get that for 60 points. Now, to put that in context, that is cheaper than a squad of scions with 2 plasma guns. Okay. Now, those racks are durable. They're toughness 4. They have an invulnerable save and they have a feel no pain. So point for point, they're actually very, very durable units. Now the liquidators are already a strong stat line. They're already very cheap for what they bring. And then you bang these liquidator guns on them and you make them Dark Technomancer liquidator guns, and it goes a bit funny. Now Dark Technomancer is an obsession. It's like a regiment trait for the old guard. And the thing with the old Dark Technomancer is basically it really boosts up all your weapons. In fact, I think it's so powerful you could, even though it's a custom trait, you're only allowed to pick 1. That's how powerful it is. Could be wrong there, please correct me, but as far as I'm aware, they only get to pick 1. Now, what it does is it allows you to overcharge all your weapons. And when you overcharge all your weapons, like normal, you're on a roll of 1 to hit, your guy dies. But the trade, and you can't re-roll it for anything whatsoever. There's no way to re-roll it. But if you do, you get +1 to hit, which is nice, and you get +1 damage. So your liquidator guns go from strength 4 with +1 to wound, I just said. So your liquidator guns go from strength 4 with +1 to wound, AP -2, and 2 damage. Now the thing is that they are flamer weapons, so they automatically hit. So you can overcharge them at no risk, because the Dark Technomancer you overcharge and kill yourself thing is like a plasma gun. It comes in on a 1 to hit, but you don't roll to hit with flamers. You just roll to see how many automatic hits you get. So they can overcharge at no risk with +1 to wound, and they're doing this in a meta full of Marines and Plague Marines, and they just melt everything. And the fact that you can get 2 squads of these in a Raider for 200 points, and this leads on to the next thing. So those guns are are super powerful, super efficient. The infantry that they're on are durable, very durable point for point, and yeah, they're really powerful. But that's only one part of the puzzle. Okay, so that's the first thing. Super flamers that they can overcharge without any risk. Now, I'm actually going to skip ahead to the third point I want to talk about, which is... Actually, no, I'm not. No, I'm going to do this properly. So keep that in mind. What we've spoken about there, keep that in your head. Okay, now moving on to the next one. There is an upgrade that you can take, a combination of warlord traits and stuff that you can take for your Dark Eldar Succubus, who's the HQ for the witches, that allows her to get between 14 and 60, that's 60, attacks from one 65-point model. Okay, now how this works is it's all about, well, every time you miss an attack, you get to fight twice, and every time you miss an attack, you get to attack again, and it's I'm not going to go through the minutiae of it, but for you to understand the power of this model, it has been demonstrated multiple times on multiple competitive streams and via lots and lots of Math Hammer. The cogitators have worked hard on this. It is very easily possible for a 65-point witch with this combination of broken warlord traits and whatnot to one-shot in one go Guilliman, Rebute Guilliman, a Primarch. Okay, so that gives you an idea of how powerful this is. A 65-point model is taking down a Primarch. And why that's so deadly is because it essentially means you've got a 65-point I want to delete anything in the game model. It's like a dispel scroll. It's like an old style destroyer weapon. You just send that out that thing, it's gonna die. It's a delete button, and it's very difficult to stop it from getting to you. It's very difficult. Now, you combine these two things with the fact that also you combine those two things with the third thing we're going to talk about, which is the Raider. Now, the Raider is a really good transport. Okay, the Raider is 85 points, and with that you get a Dark Lance. Now, the Raider itself it's received some good buffs. It's gone up from toughness 5 to toughness 6. That's a really big deal, especially for us guardsmen. It means our lasguns go from wounding out of 5s to wounding out of 6s. Big deal. But it's toughness 6 with 10 wounds, and it has a movement of 14 inches. But most importantly, it's only got a 4+ save, but it has a 5+ invulnerable save, which means any of those dedicated anti-tank weapons that you shoot at it are actually really inefficient at taking it down. Really efficient at taking it down. One of the better weapons for dealing with it that we've discussed previously are things like autocannons. But the problem with autocannons is they're actually relatively shit at taking down anything that isn't a Dark Eldar Raider. So by teching hard into countering Raiders, which are a fundamental key part of the way why Dark Eldar are so powerful, you tech in to beat Raiders, then you're going to be a very high risk to other armies like Death Guard and Marines. So it's a problem. So the problem with the Raider is it's undercosted for what it does. It's very durable point for point, and what it means, and because it's open topped and because it's so fast, then what you tend to find is the Dark Eldar hit you. They do more than this, but in the first 2 turns they hit you with 2 absolute hammer blows, because they take 6 Raiders. 6 Raiders see 5+, 6 tends to be the competitive amount, and they fill at least 2 of them with racks, with these liquidator guns. And what they do is especially take into account there's lots of landslide blocking terrain, because Raiders are very slim. So whilst they're very tall, height doesn't matter because of obscuring terrain. Obscuring terrain, if your ruin is more than 5 inches high, is infinitely blocking. So despite the fact they're really tall, it doesn't matter because they're really narrow, the new Raider models are. So what that means is that it's very easy for a Dark Eldar player to hide many Raiders behind a relatively small piece of line sight blocking terrain, but most competitive boards have 2 large L shapes. The middle of the board is a big no-go zone. Okay, so what the Dark Eldar do is they make sure that all the Raiders are hidden, are well hidden on turn 1, and then turn 1 they move out with the Raiders full of racks, and they charge forward, and they get into range. It's got a 14-inch range. And that means combined with the 12-inch range for liquidator guns, you've got a 26-inch range threat range. 9th edition boards are much smaller, but the Raider's maneuverability hasn't changed over the editions. It's just remained a very fast vehicle. And so the Raiders jump forward and they liquidate the screen. Whatever screen you have, they jump forward and they liquidate it. Okay. Then the other Raiders, at least 2 or 3 of which, maybe more, will be filled with witches. Witches are incredibly good at fighting upwards, at trading up. What that means is they are very fragile, but their damage output is insane. If they get to pick the fight, they're going to hurt something. So what happens is the racks come in, delete the screen. And the other raiders move into the line of sight blocking terrain, but they stay back. They don't get involved yet. They are wave 2. We know all about waves in the Guard. So the racks clear the screen, and then turn 2. Oh, guess what? Power from Pain kicks in. Advance and Charge kicks in. So your witches, which have got an 8-inch movement, not a 6, not a 7, an 8-inch movement. It's quite unique actually. Can jump out the raider 3 inches. They can move 8 inches. They can then advance an average of another 3 inches, and then charge. And the screen has been removed. And those witches, which will be getting 5 attacks each, via combat drugs and all the other shenanigans. 5 attacks, I think it's 4 or 5 attacks. Anyway, a lot of attacks each. And that succubus, that delete button succubus, because there's transport capacity of 11 now on a raider, so you can take your witches and your succubus in there, will all move forward and turn 2, and they will delete everything they touch. And most armies, for most armies, that 1-2 punch is going to get them. That's going to seal the deal. They're going to be pinned in their deployment zone. Both times the Dark Eldar will have picked the fights they want to pick. And at that point, even if they clear the witches and they clear those raiders, well, guess what? That's only 4 out of 6 raiders. There's 2 more raiders filled with God knows what flying around. There's Ravagers and Reavers and Hellions. We've not even discussed Ravagers or Reavers or Hellions. As I say, you don't tend to get all 3 in one, but you can do. But there's plenty of points left for the Dark Eldar to hit you with a 3rd wave and to hit you with a 4th wave. And you may survive all those waves, but you'll spend the whole game pinned in. They'll dominate on objectives, and that's the way the cookie crumbles. And so either you'll get tabled by their 3rd wave, 4th wave, or if you're so durable that you don't get tabled, you won't win on mission. And so they're picking every fight. So there's lots of other things that you could say are wrong with Dark Eldar. We've not touched upon the fact that via Real Space Raiders, they actually start with 14 command points, and everyone else only starts with 12. So they take 3 detachments, and they still get 2 bonus CP for doing that, which means they're actually so they're taking more detachments and they're getting more CP, whereas everyone else who takes more detachments gets less CP. So it's a double doozy. So you know how we've talked about that before? It's a double doozy. So basically, what do I think? So this is why they're super powerful. So all that, you might be saying, well, Morning Glory, why don't you think they should be nerfed yet? Okay, so this is a video talking about why they're overpowered, but the kicker is, why don't I think they should be nerfed yet? Well, basically, there's one more point I want to make, which is, I would argue the Dark Eldar army at the moment is essentially a 9th edition army with 8th edition points. Okay, so they have all the army-wide bonuses and buffs and all the extra gubbins that we're seeing Games Workshop, lather onto 9th edition armies. 8th edition was the edition of let's keep things simple and easy to pick up. 9th edition is a complicated edition. It's a return to form. Some people like it, some people don't. But imagine getting all the buffs of a 9th edition army, but actually basically being point costed like an 8th edition army. And 8th edition was known for being, very cheap points-wise, bigger armies. So I think Dark Eldar I think some things need to be addressed. I think racks should either be made more. I think either they should see points increases, or they should change. I think the raider needs points increased to just being a flat 100 points. I think those people that say 120 points or more are foolish. I think we should see 100 points is a sensible tweak. I think the succubus being able to delete Primarch needs to be toned down, and I think the racks need to have a risk of killing themselves. I think that's the way it should work. However, I don't think any of those nerfs should be implemented yet. Okay? Why do I think that? Well, let's just say, let's take a trip down memory lane. What happened with Guard and our conscripts? The Guard Codex dropped, and for a brief time, Guard were the king of the castle. But if I was to say to you now, oh yeah, blob of conscripts that doesn't run away, you'd laugh at me. Conscripts being overpowered you'd laugh me out the room. And so I don't want the Dark Eldar, I'm not, and Commissars being no. Games Workshop got a huge knee-jerk reaction with Commissars and Conscripts and with the Guard. And we never recovered from it. We went from being a solid competitive army to bottom of the bucket. We just kept sliding down the rankings, slippery slope. And look where we are now. We're in a really crappy position. And if Games Workshop undid all the nerfs that they did to Guard, we still wouldn't be top tier. So I don't want Games Workshop to have a knee-jerk reaction. I don't want the Dark Eldar to go through what the Guard community went through. Because the Dark Eldar community is very like the Guard community. It's made up of people who love that faction. I think Dark Eldar only make up like about 4% or 3% of the competitive scene, and even the non-competitive scene. It's a similar size for Guard players. Guard community might actually be bigger than the Dark Eldar community. And I don't want... And so what happened with when the Guard book became so powerful... So when the Guard got released and everyone thought they were overpowered, what actually happened is all those long-time Guard players who have basically got an armory Forge World worth of models, they've got huge collections, just went, oh, all this, Lehman Russes, Conscripts, they're really powerful now. I'll just take those off the shelf. I've already got them. I'll take those off the shelf and I'll field them. It's the same with the Dark Eldar community. Oh, all my Raiders and my Venoms aren't that good anymore. I'll put the Venoms on the shelf and I'll take the Raiders off the shelf. Oh, Witches are really powerful. Racks are really powerful. I'll take those off the shelf. That's what they've done. That's why we've seen this explosion, because the people that play Dark Eldar are the ones that love the faction, and that's why they're coming in and they're smashing everyone, because they have the resources. People that say, oh, we need to give the meta time to adapt. We do need to give the meta time to adapt, but I'm not necessarily talking about, oh, just take more heavy bolters and more autocannons. I'm not saying that anymore. I think by giving the time for the meta to adapt, one, we're still not seeing Marine players taking enough screening. Okay, imagine in 8th edition if you said to someone, oh yeah, you don't need a screen. You would be laughed out of the room. 8th edition, no one left the field without a screen. Okay, and a lot of people are still going into battles without taking sufficient screening. So I definitely think we need to see that as well. That's an adaptation to see. But I also, in a broader term, we need to see the next few codexes drop. Okay, we need to see we need to see the broader meta, because what we've seen for the whole of the beginning of 9th, including Necrons, is basically power armor, elite, hyper durable stuff. And now we've got a codex which is on the total other end of the spectrum. We need to see some more codexes which are on that other end of the spectrum, which will be able to counter Dark Eldar. I think Admech are going to absolutely diddle them. I think Sisters are going to just destroy, are going to be really powerful. I think Orcs are going to be really powerful. I think we need to let more... We've had a very one-sided spectrum on the meta, and now we need to see that broader playing field of other factions which aren't power armor. We need to see that. We need to see other codexes come out and see if they level the playing field. Because if you're a competitive Dark Eldar player, and it turns out that the Admech Codex is literally has got the perfect counter to Raider spam, you're not going to be taking your Raiders anymore, because Admech are actually quite a popular competitive faction, more popular than Dark Eldar as far as I'm aware. So the problem is that the Codex release schedule is very slow. We need to see more Codexes come out. And look, if in 2 months' time, if in a month, we've had the Dark Eldar Codex for a month, let 2 more Codexes come out. If by the time the next 2 codexes have come out, they are still dominant and supreme, fine, nerf them. That's when you need to apply the nerf bat. But Games Workshop has especially at the beginning of 8th edition, we're too quick with the nerf bat. We're too quick with it. They need to bring a couple more codexes out. I agree they need to be nerfed, but I think we need to have another more codexes to come out and then apply the appropriate nerfs. That's my philosophy on the whole thing. That's what I think is the best approach. Because otherwise, like I said, I think otherwise it's too much of a knee-jerk reaction. The other thing to mention is we have begun to see some lists which are quite good at countering the Dark Eldar. Okay, so it's only a few ripples in a tsunami that is the Dark Eldar, competitive dominance. We're seeing a few smaller waves pushing back. That's not really a very good analogy. We're seeing a few surfers riding the tsunami. Okay, that's what we're seeing. Okay, brave people doing that, but we're seeing that. Firstly, I mentioned AdMech. There's an AdMech list that the guy designed to beat Drukari, but he still came in, like, I think it was the top 8, top 10 at the Dallas tournament, which a lot of people are drawing upon to say that Dark Eldar are bullshit. So one guy's figured it out. He teched for Dark Eldar and still managed to beat everyone else. And we're also seeing some white scars with the Vanguard veterans do fantastic work against them. Okay, so we're starting to see some surfers on top of the tidal wave. Let's give it time. Let's give it another month. And if in a month's time, maybe I'll be eating my words. I'm more than happy to say, look, I'll be eating my words. But let's give it a little bit of time. As the Guard community, we've been where the Dark Eldar community has been. We've been all those memes about Guard being overpowered, like, oh, you're a fun, balanced faction, not you. We've been there. We shouldn't be calling. Think of how those people that started in 8th. Think of how you've still got a bad taste in your mouth about those conscript nerfs. I know I do. It just took the wind out my sails. And I played conscripts, and when they were overpowered, they were. But I played them against many people that have been playing for a long time who had absolutely no issue with facing them because they had lots of experience fighting my conscripts and my infantry army, and even if they didn't list Taylor, they knew how to beat them. When I used to play my brother every week, and when I told him that people thought conscripts were overpowered at the beginning of 8th, he laughed. He thought I was joking because we just had a game where I used the overpowered Guard army against him, and he beat me. I think it's even on a battle report, an old 8th edition battle report. Blood Angels versus Imperial Guard. Yeah, he had no issue with beating me because he knew how to beat conscripts. He'd been fighting my conscripts for 5 years at that point. And so, as the Guard community, we need to remember that, and we need to be the voice of reason and say, look, the meta would have shifted. The meta would easily have shifted and adapted and overcome Conscript Guard. Easily. Given time. Given more codexes that came out after ours. And the same thing needs to be said for the Dark Eldar. Let another couple of codexes come out, and then make the adjustment. That needs to be the approach. Let me know if you agree with me or not. Let me know if you think, look, Morning Glory, we've had a month. They've gone against everyone. They're still getting 70% win rate. They need to go. I'm willing to accept that. I am open-minded. I'm completely open-minded. I've set out my stall. I think they should be nerfed, but given a sufficient period of time. But look, if you think for the health of the game, they need putting down now, like the dirty Xeno scum they are, make that clear in the comments, guys. You guys know I'm always open to criticism, to arguments, to counterpoints, to opposing point of view. I am open to that. And put all your reasonings and everything, put it down in the comments. Let's get a discussion. Those of us who have faced the new Dark Eldar, we can put our thoughts down. Those of us who have just looked at it from a theory point of view, put it down. But it's important not to get sucked into the echo chamber. So that's everything for this week. This video went on a bit longer than I wanted, but sometimes it does when you've got a sort of more nuanced, complicated video. We had to discuss what was powerful and then blah, blah, blah. Anyway, if you've enjoyed today's video, please consider heading on over to the Patreon page. There will be a link down in the description below. This channel is entirely funded by Patreon. I don't monetize anything. I don't do any paid promotion or anything like that. It's entirely funded by donations from my absolutely fantastic and awesome and loyal Patreon supporters. All the money for the channel gets reinvested, that I get from Patreon gets reinvested back into the channel. I use it for new terrain, I use it for going to tournaments and staying at hotels if it's a 2-day tournament, and then that allows me to keep my finger on the pulse of the competitive meta. I use it for new terrain. I've recently completed doing a new YouTube studio using the Patreon money, so it all gets reinvested back into the channel. There's no minimum or maximum, there's no levels, donate more, you get to have a handshake or anything like that. There's nothing like that. I don't believe in like that kind of stuff. I mean, maybe one day, but right now I just keep it simple, and it's a simple case of donate whatever you feel like. $1, $20. I'm just super grateful for anything, to be honest. So Thank you guys for watching this video. I really hope you've enjoyed it, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.